Buenas. My name is Diego, and this is the You Live Where podcast. I've been an expat for 10 years now, and it's been the best 10 years of my life. I know that a lot of people at home are wondering or thinking about trying to do this type of lifestyle, about thinking about maybe moving somewhere else and trying their lot somewhere else in the world. And the only way that I know how to provide you with any value in that thought is by having a conversation with people who own homes overseas, with expats themselves, or people who have been on the road for a very long time. This week, I'm having a conversation with a guy named Jay from Panama. He's a relocation specialist, and this guy has so much information for you. It's amazing. So I hope you enjoy this episode.
So, Jay, hey man, pleasure to have you on the show, man.
Hey, it's a pleasure to speak with another expat.
Yes, absolutely, man. I'm very excited because you're in Panama, man, and I can't wait to hear your story. From what we've talked about, it's pretty interesting.
It
Um,
can be.
so let's go. What inspired you to move abroad, and how did you choose your current country?
So I'm a traveler, and Panama has always been on my list to return here because I was stationed here in the late '80s, early '90s. Came back in '97. So I had a connection with Panama, but I like a little bit of organized chaos. So I was always contemplating Mexico, and I got residency in Mexico, but it just wasn't my thing. I didn't feel at home there. I bought a house in Brazil. Bad idea. I shouldn't have done that. I was considering Portugal because I do speak pretty decent Portuguese, and it just wasn't a good fit. And I finally stopped fighting it, and I came back to Panama, and I feel at home here. My daughter's Panamanian. She's indigenous Kuna Indian. I was the first American to adopt a Panamanian in Panama in 1990. So, Panama is a good fit for me mentally. I mean, it just, I kind of slid right back into it like a glove. The day I landed, I can literally drive in most parts of Panama with my eyes closed, and that's a warm fuzzy feeling. To know a country pretty well, probably better than most Panamanians know their own country. So that's and there's a myriad of reasons, for Panama. I mean, it's tax friendly, and I still work, so that's an issue
Okay.
as compared to Colombia or even Costa Rica, where you're paying caja, or Panama is just a good fit. I mean, it's a really good fit for expats, and it was a kind of a welcome home for me.
So, wow, man, you've been all over Brazil, Mexico, but
Well,
this
I
is
think,
just this is home,
yeah,
huh?
yeah, it's I've lived and worked in Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras. Spent a fair amount of time in Europe, but again, the culture, Latino culture, is and you might agree with this or might disagree, but it's more of a conservative type of culture, from the I'm not Catholic, but Panama is 70% Catholic. So, it's very family oriented, and you don't have the Brazil thing going on where people are, I mean, being a thief is a, primary profession. So, you know, Panama is it's just it fits me. I mean, it just it's not perfect, but it with my belief system, I'm fairly conservative. I treat people good. I'm very charitable. So Panama is kind of the place.
All right, man. Wow. Okay, and you said you were stationed there years ago.
So yeah, so I went to and played college football for 1 year. I didn't go to college to learn. I went to college to play football.
All right.
And I realized that you had to go to class, and the my major couldn't be chasing girls, and so I'm just like, nah, this isn't for me. And I always wanted to be a police officer. And my buddy said, hey, talk to the Army recruiter, right? So I talked to the Army recruiter. He's like, we've got the job for you, military policeman. I'm like, dude, that's great. And I spoke German. I took 3 years of German in school. I mean, and my family's German. So I'm like, man, I'll put in for Germany. They'll give it to me. I went, finished my schooling, and the first place they sent me, freaking Panama. So, but in hindsight, and I believe in destiny. I truly do. And the what has happened in my life, it's easy to complain about a few things, but when I look backwards now that I'm getting older, or getting to the point where there's many more days behind me than there are in front of me, right? So I'm like, man, this has been my path the entire time. I ran the drug suppression team. I had the largest cocaine seizure in U.S. history when I was 22 years old. Now they beat that since then, but I 22 years old, and I was built pretty well. Like I said, I played college football, so I was kind of writing my own ticket in Panama. I was blonde headed, green eyed, pretty thick. And
Strapping young lad.
yeah, I was living on adrenaline. I was working undercover for 2 years, and I'm just like, and I come out of the woods in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana on a 17-acre horse farm. So you take a kid out of the woods who grew up hunting and trapping and fishing. That was my life. And then to come to Panama, and all of a sudden they're like, well, you're in charge of freaking taking down the Medellin cartel and the Cali cartel. I'm like, holy, but, and I was young and stupid. I thought I was Superman, right? That, did some really stupid things, putting myself in danger when I shouldn't have, those kind of things. But, all of that, moving forward, when I got out of the military, yeah, I was working in law enforcement in Indiana, and my blood pressure was like 180 over 110 every day, and I was early 30s. And then my dad said, do what I do, which is, he was a financial planner. I'm like, I can't do that. I beat up bad guys for a living. That's what I do. And he said, well, if you can tell a bad guy what to do with a gun, surely you can tell people what to do with your money.
It's very similar, I'm sure.
Yeah. So looking back, that black and white, in your face, do it or don't, I don't care attitude, I became the #1 advisor for the 7th largest financial institution in the world in 1990. No, I changed careers in 96. 2001, I was the #1 advisor in the United States. So, once again, I went from making $800 a month in the military to making more money than I could count. And, which was good because I was raising a family. They were, had an opportunity to, take them places, and, they all had cars, and they all had the newest shoes and clothes and cell phones. But I never stopped thinking about Panama every day of my life, because that adrenaline never leaves you. It was just, I guess I built my life around what I became here in Panama, which is, I'm going to eat your lunch if I get the chance. And, that's not necessarily a positive thing. From a mental health aspect, I was living in the past 100%. And 3 divorces later, and every divorce I lost a house, and but it's because I don't talk. I sit and I think, and people said, oh, you're an entrepreneur, Jay. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm cursed with a freaking overactive brain that's always looking for people that are trying to screw me, right? Or trying to kill me, or trying to make my next dollar. And I 50, I was in my 50s, and I finally had a good friend that said, Jay, you got an issue. Like what? It's like, dude, you don't freaking go out, you don't do anything, you go from 0 to 100 in a matter of, 0.5 seconds. And so once I recognized that I had some things to deal with, the answer was I had to come back to Panama. And, it's good and bad, but I had to come back. I had to, because I really didn't think I was going to live much longer. I just thought, you know what, there's nothing else to live for. What am I doing with my life? I've lived the American dream. I've had the big houses, the boats, the cars, the travel in the world, 10 times over, but I was never happy. Never, Now I'm sitting here, I can smile again, I do what I want to do. I'm not worried about money anymore. I could care less. Money is meaningless to me. And because I understand that friends are a lot more valuable than money. And I went for 20 some odd years of my life and didn't have maybe one or two friends. Now I've got more friends here that, I get messages all night long. Hey, how you doing? You doing okay? I'm like, who the hell is this? There's people actually checking on me. So, to get yourself, and you understand this, to take yourself out of that American, and I'm a patriot. I love the United States. But at the same time, I realized that it was not the place for me. It just wasn't. I had to come back to, once again, a little bit of chaos, a little bit of, constantly, my mind needing something new. Which, I came here, thinking I was just going to chill out. Well, I can't do that. It's not my pedigree. I can't do it. But I would say for the most part, coming back to Panama was a good decision. But coming back here, I started doing these TikTok videos, and that's how you found me, right?
Right.
And, it went from, and you understand this, it went from like 200 views. And I had some of my old military buddies that I was stationed here in Panama with. They're like, hey, show the old bordellos where we used to go, and, show us the old housing areas. And I started doing that. Well, the next thing you know, that started to get traction. And I went from, a couple hundred people looking at these videos of Panama to all of a sudden I've got a couple 100,000 looking at these videos. And I'm like, what's going on here? Then I realized I'm not the only one that didn't fit when they went back to the States. When I left Panama and went back to the States, I never fit. I just never immersed myself back into the culture of the United States. I just never did. So, in a nutshell, when you have that type of following or viewership or interest, it's common for people to say, I want to move to Panama too, or I want to move to Colombia. Can you help me? So I set up relationships here in Panama with immigration firms and realtors and whatever. Well, I run a pretty tight ship, and if I'm going to if you said, Jay, I would really like Panama, and I'm like, okay, talk to this attorney, and 3 weeks later you send me a message saying, hey, they never contacted me. That's reason for me to want to handle it,
Okay.
So one day I woke up and I'd gotten several messages over a 2 or 3 week time period. And I thought, I run a pretty successful financial planning firm. I can run an immigration firm. So June of last year, I incorporated here in Panama, and hired an attorney in December. And now we process 3 or 4 residencies here in Panama every week. So it's not what I came to Panama to do. I don't want to work 12 or 14 hours a day, but if I don't know if I would be happy. So I'm afraid to even test that, So at some point I want to hand that off to the attorney and just say, I will bring people to you, but I don't want to sit and answer 75 or 100 questions a day, I mean, I will. I love talking about Panama. I love helping people find their smile, right? But at the same time, I still want to travel, So wherever it may be. I was looking at Lima, Peru. I'm like, I haven't been to Lima, and it's only 3 hours from here. I want to go to Lima. But, the way I operate or the way I function, I'm like, well, I'm not going to go for a week. I want to go for a month or two. I want to live like a Peruvian. I want to be in the different, pueblos and communities. And so I still want to do that. And then, my mortality is always in my face. Right. So you're like, well, at what point in your life do you do these things? Do you wait until you're 62 or 65? Well, hell, at that point, your mortality, you've got maybe 10 years left and maybe not in good health. So, right now my plan is, with this immigration firm, Panama Advisory Group, to get it to a point where my young attorney, he's 41 years old, very good, that I can just hand it off. I'll do a 2-minute video every day introducing people to Panama and all the culture and the cost of living. And I'll still do that because I love doing that. And I had a radio show for 20 years, Monday through Friday. So public speaking is my thing. But, in 2 years, I could see myself in Rio Negro, Colombia, or Jardín, or, I don't see myself here indefinitely. I think it's a good place to have my roots, but at the same time, why can't I go to Colombia for 3 months? I don't want to be locked down. Even though there's nothing wrong with Panama, I still have that inquisitive mind, right? I just want to, expose myself to different things. I'm not a passport bro. I'm past that point in my life. So, my girlfriend's Colombian. She's got family in Colombia, but it's on my to-do list. But at some point, I got to do it, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So, anyways, that was a lot of information for that
Man,
question.
that's great though. That's what we're looking for. Thank you, man. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. Wow.
True.
All right, really quick. First thing that's hitting me though is, so now that you've lived in Panama, you've been around, obviously, you were stationed, you've lived in
Right.
several countries, and do you think it makes it easier for you now to continue to live in different countries? Do you think, like, all right, there's like a formula to it? Like, I know that I can live because I've lived here in Nicaragua, for instance, outside of the language, because I do speak the language, and that obviously gives
Right.
me a huge advantage. But let's just say I didn't. I know there's a formula behind being here. So it's kind of freed me up to the idea that if I could live in Nicaragua, I can live in Guatemala, I could live in
True.
Panama, I could try out all other. Do you think there's like a framework to it?
So yeah, that's a wonderful question. So, my perspective on the world, I think, is different than other people. I don't see borders. I see
Okay.
cultures and I see locations.
Yes.
So, it doesn't take much effort to investigate, how long can I be here on a passport? What does the residency process look like? I don't Google crime rates. That's
Okay.
you either have common sense or you don't. Don't go to this area. Maybe only go to this area in the daytime. I mean, things that someone who's never traveled may not think of, or maybe a big thing on their thought process. But I don't think like that. I think, that what does it take to go there? What is the healthcare like? What amenities, infrastructure, that kind of things do they have? So I think you're right when you say, is there a process? I think there is a process, but there are some places I don't want to go to simply because they just have no interest, but it doesn't mean they're bad places. But I literally could pack 2 duffel bags today and be gone and go somewhere else, and
That's a huge freedom. That's a flex, man. That's a
well,
big that's
again,
to be free on that level is very, very nice. Most people could
it,
never understand that frame.
it's perspective. When you think of Medellin, you think of, well, Pablo Escobar, and the strange thing is, I was invited to Pablo's sister's house about 6 months ago, but she didn't know my history. But she's got a box of his beard hair and it's a pretty cool.
That's
She's pretty,
awesome.
yeah, she's pretty cool, and the family's pretty cool. But again, it's perspective. There's some place, I have no interest in going back to Brazil. It's just it's a dumpster fire. I don't like it, and I don't recommend people go there. I'm just like you're going to get robbed. You will get robbed if you're there for a month. You're going to get robbed. So you know,
Uh,
to sit here and again, this is a curse. When I sit around, I don't watch television anymore. I have no interest in it whatsoever. But I do look at other places around the world. My buddy just got back from Spain. I'm like, damn it, man, that's great. He's in Florida. He's going to be back in Panama next month. But I just helped a guy relocate to Medellin and from Florida, but I'm sitting, I'm watching YouTube videos, I'm watching influencers like yourself. I'm like, well, I mean, I've got an attorney in Nicaragua that I send people to. I'm like, well, what if I move to San Juan del Sur?
huh.
And then the next morning I'll wake up. I'm like, well, Jay, that's stupid. And I'll look at someplace else. But I'm just constantly looking at what else the world has to offer. I've got clients. I've got a good client in Turkey, and she loves Turkey. I'm like, I never thought about Turkey. Croatia. One of my client relationship manager is Iranian, but he lived in Hungary for years. And I'm just all these things. Whenever you take off the political blinders, you realize we're all pretty much the same kind of people, right?
So
You
true.
remove the belief systems, because as long as you're in the search for happiness without creating victims, man, you could be buddies. So I don't care whether you're from Iran or Hungary or
Yes.
Croatia or Turkey or it doesn't. I don't care. Once you get off of this, well, are you liberal or are you conservative? Are you Catholic or are you Muslim? That is meaning. Are you gay or are you straight? I don't care. I don't care. I just you know if I need help burying a body at 2 o'clock in the morning, can I call you? That's what.
Very true. Very good. Yeah,
So
yeah.
once you remove that, and going back to the people, and this might be one of your questions here in the future, but that's one of the roadblocks when people are considering relocation. They're bringing that political division mentality with them. I'm running from the orange man, or I'm running from what. Look, don't run from something, run to something. If you're come to Panama because you think you're going to lose your rights, well, number one, I don't believe you. I just don't believe that. I don't know how many presidents I've lived through, but I don't think I've ever lost any of my rights. And I've never been in fear other than, when I worked in Atlanta or, I mean, there's some places you didn't go in Atlanta, but I mean, but from a political perspective, that's all a money game. Political division is all about money, right? There's no money in it if we're all getting along. If we're all
Right.
like, there's money in division, and I'm not going to let a politician dictate who I can hang out with.
Fair.
I'm just not. If I listed my 5 best friends in Panama, I don't know whether they're gay or straight. I've never asked, and I don't care. I don't know whether they go to church. I don't know whether they were raised in church. I don't know if they even believe in God. I don't know. I don't know whether they're Republican or Democrat. I don't know, and I don't care. All I want to know is when we sit down and have a cup of coffee that we don't talk about those things because I won't. Let's talk about where's the best place to buy fresh fish. What's the what's going on, and surprisingly, it's easy to do here. Very easy. But those people that are coming here, that I hear it every day. It's like, and I'm telling you today, I'm going to get messages from Canada because of that election yesterday.
Oh, that's right. There was an election in Canada yesterday.
So all the
The
yeah, so
liberal one, the liberal
the
party
liberal
one.
got the liberal got
I don't know
elected.
nothing about nothing. I just saw it on
Yeah,
Facebook. Yeah.
he's not even Canadian, I don't think.
I know nothing about nothing.
But I 100% guarantee it. The conservatives in Canada will be contacting me about moving to Panama. I 100% guarantee it. And I don't know anything about Canada. I couldn't point to Ontario on the map. I don't know. I don't care. You know. But but that, what a cage people put themselves in.
Yes.
To live in what a miserable life. And I intentionally don't watch television. I intentionally don't, because that freaking thing, they're force feeding us belief systems, right? You've got to believe this. You're not going to change my beliefs by watching a TV program. You're not going to change my beliefs by, telling me this guy's bad. And I didn't fall out of a stupid tree. I can make my own decisions. But at the same time, I'm not going to take my belief system and say you got to believe that. It just doesn't happen here in Panama. It just doesn't. The Panamanians, everyone's like, and this is a common question. Panama's in the news. Trump said, "Oh, we're going to take the canal," and the Secretary of Defense was here a couple of weeks ago, and and everyone's like, what, or the Panamanians hate Americans again. I'm like, Panamanians don't even can't even spell Trump, let alone talk about him. So it's not discussed here. The only people discussing that nonsense are those people watching the news. I mean, you may see a Panamanian wearing a Trump hat, but he don't even know what the hell the hat means. And that's the beauty of removing yourself, right, from that kind of environment, and putting yourself in an environment where you can actually grow mentally, grow emotionally, and build your friend circle. It's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, obviously, I can see you're a very personable guy, right? But you've been all over I can see you talk. I get it. So you make friends easily. But what would you say, man? In all of these countries, has it been easy to make a social group? Like when you land, wherever you land, do you feel which countries are easy? Being an expat like yourself.
To me, it really doesn't make a difference. And this is the advice that I give people. I said, if you go to a restaurant, I don't care whether it's in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, or it's in Puerto Jimenez, Costa Rica, or here in San Carlos, Panama. If you go to a restaurant and you hear someone speaking your language, the easiest thing to do is say, "Hey, where are you all from?"
There it is.
And if I go to a restaurant and the tables aren't talking to each other, I guarantee you 100% when I leave, they are. Because that's the American mentality, right? You're guarded, you don't communicate. Here in Panama, if I go to the restaurant, I 100% guarantee if I hear someone speaking English or Portuguese, or I've gotten to the point where I can kind of figure out what dialect of Spanish they're speaking. So if they're Paisa, if they're Costeña from Colombia, and I'll just say, "Hey, Paisa, from Medellin."
Yeah.
I don't know, really. So I don't sit and mind my own business. The cruise ships, when they come in, if I hear them speaking English, I'm like, "Hey, where are y'all from?" "Oh, I'm from Michigan. I'm from Minnesota." And so, that's the easiest way for me to answer your question. That's the easiest way for me to expand. Now I make, the clients that I help, whether they're coming to Panama or Colombia, many of those people have become very good friends, very good friends. But for the day-to-day operation on the street, if you're sitting in a restaurant with me, I'm going to be in your business. Just don't sit there and drink your beer and not talk to anybody. Talk to people. I'll tell you a quick story. Uh, I was sitting in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, and it was an outside cafe. A lot of expats in San Miguel. So I was sitting at a table, and there was two guys walked up, and there was no tables, and they said, "Oh, maybe if we stare at people," I could hear them talking. Maybe we stare at people, I'm like, "Join me," and they're like, "Seriously?" I'm like, "I've got 3 empty seats. Sit down." Found out the guy grew up about 30 minutes from where I grew up in Indiana, and he had a house that got hit by the hurricane that I set through in Florida in 2022, Hurricane Ian. He had a house on Sanibel Island that got freaking waxed. And so all of a sudden, just because I seen two guys looking for a table and said, "Sit down with me," and we have communicated for the last 2 years because I invited them to the table. So that's the approach. Now I would have never have done that in Florida. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have started that conversation. I wouldn't have invited them to sit down. Found out later they were two gay married guys. I didn't know that until they told me. I don't care, but it's so cool to get out of that shell, right? And just say,
Awesome.
"Join me, let's talk." And it turned into, they invited me to lunch later that day or dinner that day at an Italian restaurant. It just simply because I said, "Please have a seat,"
Yeah.
and it's amazing when people do that, and reach out of their comfort zone just a little bit. The amount of, here's the other thing. Everyone's got a story, right? Everyone. I don't care whether you worked in a factory for 40 years. I don't care whether you traveled the world. You are an interesting person. So something in your life is interesting. Maybe your grandpa invented a freaking something, or, something that everyone's got a story. There's no one that's boring to me. I've become a good listener. So tell me about yourself. Where are you from? Tell me about your kids. And when you present yourself like that, people will talk to you, especially when there's nothing to gain, on my end by saying, "Where are you from? Tell me about yourself." When they realize I'm not trying to get in their pocket, or I'm not trying to sell them something or whatever. It's just, "Hey, I want to learn about who you are." And one of my best friends here was a first round draft pick for the Miami Dolphins. And we sat down one day, and this guy is a freaking giant. I mean, I'm not afraid of much, but this guy, when he pulled up, he was in a van, and when he got out of the van kind of
It righted itself.
So we were sitting there one day, and I said, "Just an observation." He's like, "What is it, man?" I said, "Me and you never be buddies back in Florida." He said, "No." He said, "I would have never spoke to you." I'm like, también. I wouldn't either, But now, we're checking on each other, seeing how we're doing, It's simply amazing what the world has to offer if you just get out of that nonsense that's going on in the States. And it is nonsense.
I agree with you, man. I feel that a lot of the relationships that I've, created over the years here have definitely been because we don't talk about religion, and we don't talk about when they get here. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like they shed off a big part of, in the United States, it's the car you drive is who you are.
Yes.
The fucking church you go to, who you know, who you vote. That creates a part of who you need to be for your day to day. Whereas here, none of that shit matters. I want to hear about that awesome, you went fishing in Mexico, or you went diving at Cozumel, or I want to hear those stories. And that's what we talk about. And because of that, I've nurtured some friendships with people that, you're right, in the United States, I would have never met. I would have never. Yeah. So it's funny. I call them moments of clarity. Like, people talk about life and they want to be touched by life a lot. But you know, if
Sure.
you just get up and you go through life and you're always in auto drive, and I wake up at this time, I go to this job, I come home, I do these things, life kind of goes by you. But when you're out in the world, like you're saying, and you open up just even a little bit, it's the
Mhm.
weirdest shit that begins to happen. And it's usually a human to human interaction that you only see about in
Mhm.
movies. But in order for that to happen, you need to experience life by moving around.
Well,
Um, so yeah, man, what would you say has been the most difficult thing for you moving to Panama?
so I'm a hustler. I get,
No,
well,
you don't say.
and it's not something to brag about, but I don't sleep. I mean, I haven't slept in 30 some odd years. So I'm always, I'm hustling. If I'm working or I'm investigating, I'm doing something. Well, and you will agree with this. Latin America isn't built for hustlers. You know, you know,
It's
I
a
mean,
different type of hustler.
well,
Right.
if you tell me you're going to be here today at 2 o'clock, man, I expect you to be here today at 2 o'clock. So and excuse my language, but sometimes I lose my shit because people aren't prompt, or
Island time? Panama time?
yeah. Well, they call it Panamanian time in Panama,
Yeah, we got a
but
Nika time.
so and I knew this. I mean, it's not a shock to me, but I still never ingest it. I just like it, Panamanians can't say no. Okay. So you're like, I need this fixed. I need you to come out and fix it today. Okay, I'll be there. They have no intention whatsoever today. You know, none, none. So, you know, I have a hard time dealing with that. And I don't know if I'll ever change. Um, I mean, we're born with our name, and about the only thing that we have in our life is our word. And if you take that away, you have nothing. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it to my standards, maybe not to your standards, but I'm going to do it the way I think it needs to be done. And that's just not something that's the norm here. It's not the norm in Colombia. It's not the norm in Costa Rica. It's probably not the norm in Nicaragua. I don't want to tell you no because I don't want you to be mad at me, but I would rather you be mad at me because I don't show up for a week. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. So, I'm dealing with that right now. They put in a new water pump out here, and they do it right.
What's going
So,
on with the water pump, man?
well, it was just I had no water pressure. Had to put in a new water pump, and they put it in. There's a faulty part, and I can hear it. I'm just like, you gotta fix that. And they're like, okay, we'll check the guarantee. Well, it's a month later, and I can still hear the damn thing. So you know, it's. I guess I got better at accepting. Just like,
Sure.
does this really hurt me that they didn't fix it today? Does it really affect me? I mean, if it's something to do with, if my heart blows up and the doctor says I'm at the beach, I'll be there tomorrow and doesn't show, that's different. But the little things that cause me to blow a gasket really shouldn't be causing me to blow a gasket.
Okay.
And so, for example, the local fish guy. I know he gringo prices people. I know he does. Ceviche, $5 for the gringo, $3 for the local, right?
Gringo tax.
Yeah. So, but it pisses me off because I'm like, dude, I got 3 million people watching me. I can put you out of business today. But I'm like, you know what? That's part of his budget. If he sells ceviche to 10 Americans and 20 Panamanians, he's got it figured out that that's how much he needs to make.
Right.
So whatever. And the reality, $5. In the States, we piss $5 away on a freaking Krispy Kreme donut and a cup of coffee at the 7-Eleven, right?
Sure.
So it really isn't that important, even though I'm like, I want to freaking throat punch.
That's because you're becoming a local, man. You've been there
Yeah,
so long now that you're like, dude, I'm a local. I gotta get
yeah,
local prices, man.
yeah.
We've been doing this for 2 years now, brother.
Exactly, exactly. So that's probably the hardest thing is just bringing my American dream, the dog eat dog mentality to, the dogs here, they don't eat each other. In the States, they do. Right? So, once again, I don't know if I'll ever get over it, but it's more of whoever's around me just tells me to shut up. So, yeah.
But so seeing that and talking to you for this time, I could see that you're hustling. You go hard. And I'm assuming that in Panama, as we're saying, it's slowed you down a lot. Has it added to your health? Do you think you definitely it's been good for you there? You said it fits you. You've slowed down a little bit. Do you think it's added
So,
years to your life?
surprisingly, well, I went in the States, I went to the doctor probably once a month, right? And that's because the VA, it's just the VA. Here, I had to make myself go get a blood test yesterday because it's been, I don't know how many months. I'm like, I better do it.
Okay.
And so I went and got my cholesterol checked, and I got, and I'm a meat eater, so I knew my cholesterol was going to be a little high. I'm older, so I had my PSA checked. It's a little elevated, it's been elevated for a while. But from the health aspect, one of the first things that I did that I made myself do here is I stopped eating processed food. Just stopped, right? So everything I eat, whether it's at a local fruit stand, vegetable stand, the guy selling fish out of a cooler on the side of the road, the meat at the market. You got to be aware. I mean, it's not always great. I mean, it may have been sitting there too long, but once I start doing that, the brain fog went away. I mean, I recognize it. Once I detoxified from all that freaking poison in the States, and it's freaking poison.
Poison.
Once I did that,
Yeah.
I felt better. I had more clarity in how I thought. I sleep a little bit better. Instead of sleeping 4 hours, I sleep 6 hours. But I won't even eat frozen food. None. If it comes in a package, forget about it. I am not eating it. So grasping or wrapping my brain around the American mentality of I need 300 different choices of ranch dressing.
Okay.
Or I don't feel like cooking. I'm going to get me a bag of chicken nuggets or go through the drive-through. There ain't no freaking drive-throughs here. Zero.
Okay.
So once you break that, I've got to fly back to Indiana here in 3 weeks, and I already have anxiety because I don't know where I'm going to eat. Yeah, and the same thing in December. I went back for Christmas, and I'm just like, I don't want to eat that garbage because I know I'll feel bad, and I did. I went to a couple of restaurants, and it's freaking nasty. I mean, you feel it. And it slows you down, and it just doesn't make you feel good. And I was ready to get the hell back here. I'm just like, I need fresh fish and ceviche and avocados. I got a mango tree in my front yard. I got papayas right there at a tree. I got fresh Panamanian lemons here. I eat mangoes off the ground here. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
And you don't have that in the States, right? You just don't. And if you do, you pay 3 times the price for it. You go to Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, what's the other? Fresh Time, and you're paying 2 or 3 times for no pesticides, no fertilizers. And I'm like, dude, I picked that shit right off my tree here.
Like right up front.
I just got to get to it before the birds do, right? So
That's great.
every morning I wake up and all the mangoes are eating off the ground. Something ate the mangoes in the middle of the night. So, that is such an eye opener. I mean it, and I tell everybody, I'm like, you're gonna feel better here. But when you go to the store, just get what you need to eat for 2 or 3 days. All right,
Yeah.
Keep it fresh. And when you leave the store, stop out here at Jesus's freaking fruit and vegetable stand and get you
load up.
get you a pipa fria, a coconut water and whatever. And people are like, damn it, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I know I'm right, but they got a Starbucks up here and it's full of freaking Americans. I'm like, what, you came to freaking Panama to drink Starbucks?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know, you've got 10, 15 different kinds of Panamanian coffee. You got all kinds of Colombian coffee, Costa Rican. Why would
Give
you?
give me your hot spot, man. Tell me the insider. If I can't, Jay, I'm gonna be visiting next week. Where am I gonna go to get a cup of coffee or a good place to eat? Give me your inside hit.
That's a great question and an easy question. Look, any restaurant or coffee shop, if there's a bunch of Americans there, don't stop. Don't stop. Look for the place that's full of Panamanians.
Slip
All
in.
right. Yeah, and that's where you go.
All right.
Because I guarantee you it's going to be about a third of the cost. You know, so the Chinese, and I know this is a freaking political topic, but the Chinese have a pretty big presence in Panama.
Okay.
All the fruterias, all the restaurants, I mean, mini markets, they're all Chinese. But a lot of times these Chinese mini markets, they also have a buffet that you can eat breakfast for like $2, right? So fried plantains, the fresh yuca, whatever. That's where I'm eating. Yeah.
All right.
That's where I eat. But if I pull up and everyone's in their freaking Tommy Bahama and Hawaiian shirts and Bermudas, and I'm not eating there. I'm not. I'm going to the place that there's a line of Panamanians out the door. That's
Got
where
you.
and again, I tell people that I'm like, do not, peel. I don't know if you got them in Nicaragua, but in Panama you got pio pio,
No.
which is
What's a
pio
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 pio?
is kind of like a Church's chicken or a Popeye's chicken.
Okay, I'm with it. Pio pio.
Pio pio, but it's loaded with Panamanians, and I'm like, well, I'm going to eat there, and they've
So it's like
got.
what, like a KFC, like a chicken joint?
Yeah, but man, it smells like freaking old chicken and shit when you walk in. I mean, it's just, it smells like a Panamanian restaurant. So I've tried it. I'm not a big fan of it. The only time I ever had food poisoning, I ate at a freaking Pollo Sam's. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Whatever they couldn't sell throughout the day, they threw it back in the deep fryer, and you could buy the whole bag of it for like $5.
I think we've all paid that price. The gas station sushi.
Yeah, I had the shits for like 3 weeks, but I enjoy those places. It's number one. It's not, financially I'm fine, but if I don't have to spend $20 on a meal, I can spend $3. I'm going to spend $3.
And like you're saying, usually the $3 food is more authentic and better.
And there's really not even a Panamanian dish. It's actually, if someone says, what's your favorite Panamanian food? It's actually Chinese. It's a arroz con pollo, arroz con pollo, camarones. It's Chinese. And the only thing that they claim is sancocha, the soup, right? It's
Okay.
got like a freaking chicken leg, a piece of corn, and a potato or some shit in it. But the sancocha in Colombia is much better than Panama. But I like, yeah, give me a bowl of sancocha so. But I am up to date on my hepatitis A. Just in case.
How is healthcare in Panama? Is it easy?
Healthcare in Panama is excellent.
Okay, cool.
It is excellent. You got a Johns Hopkins hospital here. I would say they're more advanced than many of the hospitals in the States. Most of their surgeries are all robotic. Most of the doctors are U.S. trained. The cost of, healthcare is a problem here from the insurance standpoint.
Okay.
Because Medicare doesn't work, outside the U.S. You're aware of that. So retirees that are coming here are going to have to pay out of pocket. If they're 66, 67 years old and they get attacked by rabid monkeys or whatever, when they go to the hospital, they're going to have to pay out of pocket. But with that being said, the healthcare is cheap. So I had a quote for an MRI in Naples, Florida, and it was like $5,500 out of pocket. I got it done here for $300. And
that's a big jump.
And Panama City, Panama is like Miami without the crime. It's very first world upscale. not it's not Panama. You know, it's kind of like this conglomerate of world societies all come together. You hear 5 or 6 different languages every mall you go to, but the healthcare is really good. Now, if you get out in these areas where I'm at, if you go see the doctor, may cost you $5, $10. Okay. And they've got a socialized government healthcare system here. You got to wait. You know, there may be 50 Panamanians in front of you, but to see the doctor may be $2, you know. So yeah, but healthcare is good. Health insurance, no, no. You know, if you've got any pre-existing conditions that you're not going to get Panamanian health insurance, it's not like Obamacare. You know, it's, you know, if you're diabetic, you're not going to get insurance here. So I recommend to a lot of people who may have healthcare issues, take Panama off the list. You know, unless you're financially independent to where you could pay $30,000 for a triple bypass, Panama's not the place. You know, the ambulatory services here, and this is actually a very big deal. They're all private. So if you call an ambulance, they may or may not show up. And when you get in, they may ask for $50 before they even take out of your driveway. And the traffic in Panama, you know, if it's rush hour in the morning or afternoon, I don't care where you're at, you know, you may not make it to the hospital. So, you know, if your heart blows up or you have a catastrophic event, you better do it in the hospital parking lot. It is the number one topic that I share with people that are considering Panama. You know, and I don't recommend Panama to everybody. I don't. And if they got health issues, I'm just saying, take it off your list. This is not the place to be sick, you know, unless you could pay for it out of pocket. If you pay for it out of pocket, come on down.
You are saying it's affordable, even if you do have to pay out of pocket.
It's affordable, but you know, if they got to crack
when it starts
chest,
going up into higher things, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, if you break a hip or you know, you step on a scorpion or whatever, I mean, that ain't nothing. But you know, once again, you have a stroke, you know, you blow a fuse, whatever. It can get pricey, you know, and when they roll you in the hospital here, you've got to pay a deposit if you don't have insurance. So when I am out and about, even though I've got VA healthcare, not all hospitals take it here. With my passport, I carry cash so that I can pay a deposit if I have a car accident or something goes wrong, that I could pay a deposit at the hospital until they can at least stabilize me, you know, and maybe put my ass on a plane and go back to the States or to another hospital or whatever. If my concern is people are coming down here on fixed income, they have no emergency reserves. If that is your financial picture, I wouldn't come to Panama. I just wouldn't.
Okay.
So it's not good news, but it's reality.
Yeah, it is reality. Okay. So I'm a young guy. I'm considering, or you know, I'm a guy and I'm considering moving out to Panama, let's just say. What would be your top 3? Like, how would I mentally prepare myself for this? What's your biggest piece of advice to give me to look at first? What would you say, advice-wise?
So when it comes to trying to figure out Panama, based on age, the conversation always is going to resolve around healthcare. What's your plan? All right, whether you need it or not, shit happens, right? The second thing is, because there are 5 microclimates in Panama, what do you want day to day? Do you want 75-degree weather, or do you want to sweat your ass off when you walk outside? What do you want? So once we get those 2 figured out, then my next question is, do you want to sweat your ass off in the city, or do you want to do it on the beach? Because there is no beaches in Panama City. You got to drive out, you know, an hour and a half to find the beaches. So those 3 things is healthcare. What kind of climate do you want?
Okay.
You know, temperature wise, probably the last thing is the cost of living. what are you prepared to pay? In the city, the average rent with a bay view is going to be about $1,250 to $1,500 a month for a 2 bedroom. All right. That's not bad. You got 24-hour security, you got a pool, but in Panama City, they ran out of dirt, right? So everything goes up. So edificials, high rises.
Yeah.
Come out to where I'm at and everything's flat. So I've got a house. I'm looking at the beach. I'm not in a high rise. So, if you're a country boy or whatever, I need to know that. If you feel more comfortable being around a lot of people, I need to know that. And I need to know what your monthly budget is. In Panama, the rule of thumb, and this isn't science, but I tell people it for a single person, $2,500 a month, you're going to live in a really nice place. Okay. You're going to eat out, all your groceries, utilities, going out to eat, having a cocktail, having a beer, whatever. $2,500 a month, you're living high middle class here. All right.
Okay.
If it's 2 people, I tell them $4,000. My opinion, right or wrong, is if you're going to move outside of the States, don't live on freaking top, or on top ramen and hot dogs. Live a little bit. If you want to go have a beer at the local restaurant and or you want to go to a show, or you want to do something, don't have enough money to do that. But if someone says, well, my budget's $1,200, don't come to Panama. Don't come to Panama. You're not going to enjoy yourself because you're other than sitting in your apartment every day, you're just not going to be able to do much. And the next thing, I guess number 4 is, do you want to own a car, or do you want to be able to walk or take an Uber? If you want to take an Uber, you're going to be in one of the 3 large cities here. That's it. All right. And an Uber in Panama is $3.50 wherever you go. If it's $4, it's because you cross town in the middle of traffic. It's not, your budget may be $50 a month for transportation.
Okay.
The metro system here is like 50 cents. I don't recommend taxis. And if you want to walk to the pharmacy, the supermarket, the restaurants, the coffee shops, whatever, you're going to be in Panama City. That makes the decision making really easy. But if you say, I want to have a car, where I live, you got to have a car. You have to have a car. There's no bus here. The Ubers, it's a private community. Ubers don't come in here. You want to travel the country, you got to have a car. But with that being said, freaking cars here are cheap.
Yeah.
And once again,
in Nicaragua, our cars are expensive. The used car market is expensive. Shit's expensive here for cars.
The most popular car here are Chinese-made cars.
Okay.
And they look like a freaking Tesla.
Like GAC? We have a GAC, we have BYD, we have a couple of them here too.
There's like 6 or 7.
Yeah, we have the Great Wall, Tie Dock,
Yeah. Cherry.
Cherry, we got the Cherry.
Fort something. They're freaking nice. And
dude. Yeah, there's one in the mall for like $20,000, and it's a Benz. It's like a Benz. It's a small little 4-door, but dude, I look at that thing and I'm like, wow.
Wow. In December, I bought a Toyota. Because I lived in Casco Viejo, which the parking is atrocious. I bought a small car. I paid $14,500 for a brand new 2025 Toyota.
Okay.
But I could have went up to a mid-size SUV, one of these Chinese-made models, for 21 grand.
Yeah.
And have a 5-year warranty. And they look like a freaking Star Trek spaceship on the inside of them. I mean,
dude, I know, it's ridiculous.
Screens.
So the one I looked at, the screen spanned the whole front end of the car. It was like it's just this huge display. I couldn't believe it.
The only drawback is we don't know what the maintenance history is on them yet. But for 20 grand, that's a throwaway car.
I'll tell you the truth. I'm kind of with you on that one. I don't know if I'm ready to take that jump yet. I'm looking at something. I'm thinking about buying a RAV4 right now. An older RAV4, but I don't know those shiny for the same money I could put down on that RAV4. I could get a Chinese spaceship. You know what I mean? So
Well,
I don't
my
know.
opinion is if the Chinese car lasts 5 years, I'm going to throw it away after five. It's the same as leasing a car. I don't know yet. I
Ah,
mean, the rule of thumb in Panama is Toyota,
yep,
Mitsubishi, Honda, Kia. Kia is big here.
yep.
Um,
For us, it's definitely Toyota's number one.
yeah, but for people who are like, you know, the question is, well, I want to buy a new car. What's the financing? I'm like, nope, you're not financing a car here. Yeah, number one, the bank isn't going to loan the money. You're either going to pay cash. If you can't afford a new car, buy a used car. The problem in Panama is Panamanians don't take care of their cars.
Is it like that also with, let's just say somebody wanted to buy a property? Is there any type of financing in Panama or no?
Zero. Zero.
Zero. Same thing here. Zero. It's all cash. If you're coming from the States or from anywhere, really, you want to purchase something, it's going to be
Well, and,
cash.
and Panama, I tell people never to buy in Panama. For example, this house I'm in is 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 offices, fenced in probably an acre,
Wow.
and I'm looking at the beach, and I'm paid $1,500 a month. If I were to write a check for this house, probably $750.
Okay.
So in Panama, it's the complete opposite of what the American mentality is of I need to own a home because it's equity. No, property values, other than during COVID, they don't change here. So houses may sit on the market for two or 3 years, and you say, well, it's been on the market for 2 or 3 years. I'll lowball them. They're not going to take it. They will not take it.
Yeah,
So
it's worth what it's worth.
and the typical American response is, well, what do I care? I'm like, well, that's a dumbass response, because what's going to happen is you're going to die in Panama, and your kids are going to get stuck with a house that they're paying, property taxes on, all this, and they can't sell it. And the only way they can sell it is to sell it to someone like me that's going to offer probably 50 cents on the dollar. All right. So you just paid 30% over because gringos, they pay 30% more than what the house is worth. And then they got a guy like me who's going to come in underneath of them and pay 50 cents on the dollar just so they can sell it and collect their inheritance. So it's a bad idea. It's just a bad idea. And the other thing, I've got 5 kids. If I owned a home in Panama and I died, my kids don't speak Spanish. Who in the hell I don't want them paying an attorney in Panama to set up a power of attorney to sell it. I don't want them to deal with it.
Okay.
I rent a house, whatever's in it, freaking Panamanians can steal it when I'm dead. I don't give a shit. I'm done.
All right, all right.
So, that's the other American dream. I need to own property. No, you don't. You don't need to own it. If you do, fine, but you need to plan on dying in that house. Because if you need to sell it because you need to go back for healthcare, you're not going to sell it. It's not going to sell.
It's not going to sell. All right. So definitely own before, or definitely rent before own. Do you know, it's something that I've noticed doing business with a lot of international people as well, is when I do a business with somebody in America, it's very down to the dollar. It's all ROI. I paid this for it. What's it going to be in so many years where I could sell it? What it's about. And I noticed that doing business with other people, it's not always that. Like with, Canadians, as an example, they'll look at something and say, oh, well, you're right on the beach. That has a cost.
Right.
The fact that I'm going to live eating healthier has a cost. My lifestyle. So they just look at things differently. I've noticed that a lot with Americans.
Yeah. When we're talking about money, my biggest sin was when I was bored, I would buy shit. In the States, I collected. I probably had $30,000 worth of antique fishing lures, right? I collected things, and, in Indiana, it gets cold. Everyone's got cabin fever. So I would go to estate auctions and, different things. I would just buy because I was bored. If I had $1,000 in my pocket right now and someone said, Jay, you need to spend that before the sun sets, I couldn't do it here. What am I going to buy? There are no antique stores here. There's nothing I need. There's no collectibles here. Everything, all my money goes towards rent, utilities, and food. That's it. There is nothing else I can spend my money on. Nothing.
Do you think that's helped you being I don't want to say a minimalist, but where you are now, just getting rid of that type of stuff? Did it lift the weight off your shoulders? Has it helped?
I still miss going to like estate auctions a bit. I mean, I actually enjoyed that kind of thing. I love antiques, but in Panama they don't have antiques because they use the shit until it turns to powder and they can't use it no more, right? So
Turns to powder.
you know, so I miss the activity. I don't miss owning it,
Okay.
right? Yeah, I don't need antiques. I don't need $30,000 of the fishing lures. I don't need those things, but I liked the buying. I liked looking for those things, the search, and I do miss that. And I Googled the shit out of antique stores in Panama. They don't exist. You know, there's nothing to collect here. You know, nothing.
Shells,
So,
man. Shells.
but actually, Panama's not very good for shelling. In Florida, in Southwest Florida, man, that was great. But here, you can find a couple of clam shells or whatever. But
Here it's seasonal here. Sometimes we get some cool stuff wash up, but
yeah, and I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. But and I'm a snake guy. I love snakes. I mean, I used to breed Burmese blood pythons, but so trying to eat up my time here sometimes becomes difficult.
so what's a typical day look like? Give me a typical day.
Brother, because I'm working, I'm answering questions. So I have to mentally not come into the computer in the morning to go down to the beach and walk for an hour. And there's zero people on the beach. None. Zero.
That's awesome.
So if there is, it might be some old lady walking her dog, but there's no one on the beach. And it's not a beautiful beach, but it's a beach, it's black sand, but there's no trash here. In the city, there's trash, but I have to make myself do that. And then I have to make myself say, I'm going to work for 4 hours and then I'm going to go enjoy a local fried corvina, fried fish somewhere. I have to make myself do that. So a typical day, I come in and I work for about 4 or 5 hours. I have to, and I'll respond to everybody I need to. I get my attorney lined out. I get my relationship manager lined out. Once I do that, the afternoons typically are pretty free. And today, I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go probably eat a fried fish for lunch. Spend $10. I want to make myself do that, but Sunday I went up and visited a new town, Panama, which is about 20,000 people. It used to be the capital of Panama, but I've never been there. So I'm like, I'm going. So that is what I do with my time now. I introduce my followers to the same places I go.
Okay.
So I'm like, hey, your rent here is going to be $400 a month, but you're an hour from the beach. I guess I incorporate. I share my life through video because I think there are many people looking for that. I think there's a lot of people that are like, they can't retire yet. They can't come to Panama yet. So they're living through my eyes.
Like
I understand that. So I'll sit out here in the morning, drink a cup of coffee. There's a lot of parakeets here. So I close my eyes, clear my brain, listen to the birds. I need that. I mean, mentally, I'm a freaking basket case, but I can dial myself down here much easier than I can in Florida, because in Florida, I only went to Publix grocery store at 6 o'clock in the morning because I didn't want to deal with anybody. All right. I just didn't. And if I went at 7 o'clock, I had to fight some blue-haired lady over a parking spot, So, and someone would, the snowbirds run red lights in Florida. I was just constantly on edge. And here I'm not. I'm just not. So mentally, it's healthier here. Okay. Physically, it's healthier because I'm eating stuff that's not,
right.
full of nine different dyes and, whatever. So Yeah. Some people may look at my life and say that's boring. I needed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I needed simplicity. So in the States, I would have never have envisioned myself spending as much time as I do doing nothing here. You
Yeah.
know,
That's a beautiful
so
thing.
yeah, it is.
Let me ask you a question. So you're an older guy, and there's a lot of older guys who are going to watch this, right?
Yeah.
Was it difficult for you getting into the TikTok world? Was it difficult for you learning this social media? I mean, I found you through social media, and you have a huge presence, man. It's pretty impressive. But as an older guy jumping into it and handling all this social media stuff, what do you think? What would
So,
our older dudes at home are watching this? Like, how in the does this guy do this, man?
well, so my past is probably much different than others. So, like I said, I had a radio show for 20 years, Monday
Okay.
through Friday. It was on financial literacy. And I was actually, and I will lose followers if they see this, but I was on, I, my radio show was on Fox Radio Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon between Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. But it was not political. It was stewardship, avoid debt, those kind of things. So, and I've been a public speaker for, I don't, talking about mostly financial things. And I was also a pastor for 3 years, not because I wanted to be, is because people knew that I was pretty well versed, and they lost their pastor, and they're like, "Will you step in for a little while?" And it turned into 3 years. Um, but and the church actually grew because I talk different. You know, I, I'm just, my opinion is some people need their ass beat every once in a while. It, so public speaking has never been an issue with me. To kind of dial in your question, the biggest thing I had to learn was algorithms, when to post, hooks, those kind of things. So the best way to learn that is learn it from other people that are successful doing it. So I would, I don't ask them to share their secrets. I just watch them. I am a student of watching people. So I would watch, successful people that, whatever. Now I knew that my niche was going to be very small, right? Now, I've got a buddy that's doing life advice and, whatever. Got another buddy that's doing using credit card points. And he's actually doing quite well. But, being in my 50s and the TikTok world, it wasn't difficult
Okay.
other than learning. And the TikTok world changes about every 30 days. For a while they wanted 8-second videos of some girl dancing in a bikini, right?
Yeah.
So you see some silver-headed freaking gorilla getting on here and talking about leaving the States. The biggest challenge I've had, and it's not anymore, is I took stuff too personal when someone would comment.
Ah.
And I'm
Okay.
like, dude,
Dude.
I mean, you're commenting some stupid crap to a guy that got sued 43 times for excessive use of force. It's not a good decision. So I only lost 2, by the way. But that was my challenge. Even today, I got on there and someone I was talking about this town that I visited Sunday, Panama.
Okay. Yeah, you were telling me the capital.
Some guy says, "We don't want you here. Stay the fuck out." And I'm like, I live 45 minutes from you, and and I don't show up in the middle of the day, But then I'm just like, this he's just part of the culture on social media, which is drive-bys, right?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, drive-by actually meant drive by and lighten somebody up. But now drive-by is on social
No.
media.
Yeah, it's a clown. It's a what are they?
Trolls.
Trolls. That's the word I'm looking for. There you go.
So
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I don't struggle with it, but sometimes I'm just like, come on, hey, if you don't like the content, just move on, just move along.
You know, man, what's worse is we're old and we have wisdom and shit, man. These young kids that get I'm serious, these young kids, they get a bad comment and they take it like it's a hit to their
Yeah.
whole being. Like, it's
I
crazy.
mean, and the great thing is because I didn't know that it was going to be successful as it has been. So, I did that TikTok creator program thinking, hey, I'm going to make $1 million. As soon as you do that, TikTok dials down your first step. I was making like 90
Fuckers.
bucks a month, right? So I'm like, I'm getting out of that program, going back to just straight educational material. And now my views are back up, minimum 5, 10, 20,000 per video or whatever. So I did a video a month ago talking to people that are relocating outside the United States. And my recommendation was, I said, you don't have to be great, but what a way to create a legacy of your life to just record because it stays forever and tell stories about your life so that your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids can find your channel on TikTok after you've been dead for 10 years and hear you tell about being in the Vietnam War or being,
Yes.
or,
Yes.
and I'm not being chauvinistic, but I said, ladies, get out a book and write down your family recipes. So social media is a tool, just like it can be good or bad, just like a hammer. You
Yeah.
build a house with a hammer, or you can beat someone to death with a hammer.
Yeah.
TikTok, Instagram, it's all the same. You could do some really creative things on social media, or you could be an ass, one or the other.
You could be an ass. This is true.
So, I tell people, don't, if you move to Panama and you lose your purpose, you're going to die. That's what happens. So just start, and I don't care if only 3 people look at your video. That's not what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is create a book or a historical reference to your life that can be saved on a social media platform. And I will teach them how to scrub that video, remove the watermarks, and put it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, right? And just put it out there. And every day, get up and do a 2-minute video about your childhood or your working years or your veteran status. Tell me about your grandma. Here, I'm going to ask you this question: how valuable would it be for you to have hours and hours of your great grandma or great grandpa telling stories about their life?
Legit, you hit me where I agree with you 100%, man. I got one of those GoPros not too long ago, and I fucking film my daughter doing everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I watch me, and we do videos together. She's 3, so it's what it is.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. Something happens to me, she has that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She has these conversations. She has me talking to you and thousands of others. So I agree
So
with you, man.
what a great thing. So to go back to just a simplistic answer, I don't care if you're 70, I don't care if you're 7, to be able to create something that other people will enjoy. Don't worry about the people that don't enjoy it. Worry about the people that do enjoy it. I would give anything to have recorded my grandpa's stories about
Seriously.
the farm and the general store, and my great grandpa when he created his own hybrid watermelon. Just once again, no one else but me would probably care about that, but I would give anything to have it.
Yeah.
If you look on TikTok now, they're selling books that you give to on Mother's Day or Father's Day for your mom.
Oh yeah. I've seen those commercials. If your parent is still alive, give them this book or whatever.
Stop being a freaking slug. Go actually interview your mom or dad or your aunt or uncle or your grandma. Interview them.
Yeah.
And rather than just see them at Christmas time, how great that would be, not for just us, but for our own grandkids to be able to see our grandparents. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with you, man. It's pretty heavy. I did interview my parents. Just a quick plug if anybody wants to see the episode. But yeah, man.
I would.
So I know it's an obvious one, but I'm going to ask anyway. What's the you helping these people out, man, what's the greatest benefit for you? All these people that moved to Panama, all these people that are changing their lives through you, what's that doing for you?
Gives me purpose. So I'm being a little, there's something in it for me as well. All right. It's not monetary. It's satisfaction. And it sounds corny, but it's not to me. If I can help you find your smile, I have accomplished something positive in my life. You know,
Awesome.
it's not complex. Nothing more to it. You know, if you are unhappy here and I can facilitate you being happy, Panama or wherever Panama's Panama. It could be anywhere. It could be
Right,
where
right.
you're at. But if I can help you design how that looks, then I have created a legacy for the both of us because at some point I don't need attaboys. I don't need people to pat me on the shoulder and say, if it wasn't for you, I get all of my joy by seeing that you have found something that gives you purpose, gives you drive, gives you an opportunity to smile. So many people have lost their smile. It's ridiculous.
You ain't lying, man. Do you have a specific client or circumstance in mind? Don't give me any names or anything, but do you have anything like a memory in your head that impacts you that you help somebody out?
Um, there
I'm sure there's quite a few. Yeah.
several, and most of them are military veterans that didn't realize how bad of a shape they were in, mentally and physically. That for one day, for whatever reason, whether it was divine intervention, I don't know, but my video shows up in their newsfeed, and for them to start watching, and then to actually start thinking about it, and then to actually reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'd like more information," and then to actually show up here and to sit down and have a beer or a cup of coffee with me, and them to say, "I can actually do this." Yes, you can. The biggest breaking the chains is my specialization because they're an umbilical cord, chains, whatever you call it. People find excuses not to be happy. Well, my kids, I'm babysitting for my grandkids. If I leave, my kids are. Look, you're a free babysitter. If you think you're any more than that, you're just confused. And if you think that your kids are not going to talk to you anymore, if they actually choose that, then your circle just got a little tighter, and don't worry about it. Sometimes you got to push people away that are preventing you from being happy. So there are a number of people that I've taken them from someday I may consider it, and within 6 months their ass is here in Panama eating friggin' fried plantains. You know what I mean? And I get messages, and I check on people. I'm just like, "How you doing? Doing okay?" And sometimes people have some difficulty, and people are like, "Why did I wait so long?" I'm like, "It's a good question, but don't focus on it. That's the past. It's not where you've been. It's where you're at. You're here. Try it out. After 2 years, you don't like it. You can always go back to the States. You're a citizen, right? Or you say, I'm going to go to Medellin for 2 years.
Try something else.
But once they break out of that mentality of I'm stuck here or here or here, that's nonsense. It's just nonsense. If you've got the financial means to do it and your health is good enough, go. And you don't have to become a resident of Nicaragua or Panama. Come and visit for 3 or 4 months.
That's what I tell people.
You don't have to live here like I do. Come and visit, and then, but my rule of thumb when I was still working was I was going to go somewhere every 3 months. I called them mini moons, like mini honeymoons or whatever. I would just take off and go. But from Panama, it's easier to do what I have taught myself to do, which is I could be in Medellin in an hour. I could be in Cartagena. I could be in Bogota. I could be in Lima. I could be in San Jose. I could be in Havana, Cuba. I could do it
Anywhere.
much easier from right here than I could from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Sure.
Okay. Because I mean, we got to be honest, traveling for 8 or 10 or 12 hours, that becomes work. But I could grab my backpack, throw 3 or 4, changes of clothes and go stay in Medellin for a week and come back. Or I could go on Friday and come back Monday.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So that is a new mentality that I try to teach. So if I could teach people, hey, live it up, man. Mortality is 100%. We're not getting out of here alive. And I can tell you that the Grim Reaper makes your body feel like shit before the day actually gets there. So that at some point you may not feel like walking up a volcano or kayaking or do it while you still have your health.
Yeah.
Too many people. I'll tell you this because I think it's very important. Financial planner for 30 years. All right. So who are my clients? People in retirement. I don't have young clients because young clients don't have money.
Okay, I'm with you.
So all my people are 65, 70, 75, 80, 85. And I ask them, what would you do different in your life? The number one answer is, I shouldn't have waited so long to retire. Number one, 100% of the time, number one answer. And then for people that would, go to Belize or go to Cancun, I'm not talking about serious expats. They would say, I should have traveled more and I should have dumped all this crap in the States. But number one, I should have not waited. So people wait until they don't feel good anymore because they say, well, Social Security is the biggest scam ever, right? Because at 62, you could draw it. It increases by 8% every month that you don't draw it. So you're looking at age 62 versus age 65, there may be a $400 difference a month. If you wait until you're 70, for example, if I drew Social Security at 62, my Social Security statement says $2,400 a month. If I wait till I'm 70, it says $4,400 a month. The problem is if I wait till I'm 70 to draw it, I've got to live till I'm about 85 to make up for all those years that I didn't
draw. Yeah.
So now
Gambling.
I have learned when someone's getting close to 62, stop being a dumbass and draw it. unless you can tell me you're going to live to be 90, you're an idiot if you don't just go.
Cool.
And the other thing is this is what happens when people retire. You have mental depression, you have nervous breakdowns, you have divorce, or you die. That's the 4 things. That doesn't happen whenever you leave the States. If you get out here and you're like, I'm learning a new language and I'm, whatever.
Right.
You're living longer. Once again, you're not eating the poison, but that retirement, and that's the biblical thing. Retirement is never mentioned in Scripture, not once. And I think there's a reason for that.
Work forever.
No, I think that we are all given a talent. So you've got the talent to
It's not work at that point. It's keeping yourself busy. Idle hands.
Yeah, you don't have to be paid to do it, but you need to use whatever your talent is. And that's it. 2 things. When I pick up a new financial planning client, my number one question to them is, what makes you smile? Do you know how many people can't answer that question?
Yeah, that's a sad thing in and of itself.
All of them. I'm not talking about, my family makes me. No. What makes you smile? People can't answer it. That is a huge, huge problem. And how do you teach that?
You just got to slow down and take the time to look inward.
I would have a hard time answering that myself today. What really makes me smile?
I know what makes me smile, man.
Well,
120 on a motorcycle, 2 wheels.
Well, there you go.
Everything slows down. Nothing but that smile. You, the bike. That does it for me. Getting choked
So,
out on Sundays.
so
And all right, so
I
you've
did.
I've heard you a number of times. You've mentioned the veterans. So obviously you're a veteran yourself, and you work with veterans. Do you think that it's essential to get veterans to open up to see what this is, to see these life that could be available? Because a lot of what the U.S. has done is, I don't know.
It is, and I have a different take on the veteran community. So I always thought that I was looking for peace, right? That I was looking for peace, tranquility, the sailboats, the beach, the pretty women. That's not it. Veterans, and through no fault of their own, they whether you served 4 years in the military or you served 20 years in the military, you are reprogrammed to dwell on chaos. And most veterans never acclimate back to life in the United States, especially if they were downrange in the big sand pit, or they were here in Panama in the jungle with me, or what. You never. How can I go from multi-million-dollar drug seizures to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where there was a Domino's pizza and a McDonald's? I never felt like I belonged there. And most veterans, they say there's 22 veterans a day that take their life. There's more than that, I guarantee it. And I have got to that point, not that I was suicidal, but I'm just like, I don't know where else to look. I don't know what's going to quench my thirst. And I've asked myself, what if I die today? So what? That's a terrible mental state to be in. I would have never, ate a bullet, and never. But I have gotten to the point of giving up. I just thought, like, once again, 3 divorces, and two of those divorces, I was a very good husband. First one, I was terrible, but to lose your vision, to lose your purpose, to lose, why do I do what I do? And to wake up every day and say, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I don't know. I've got purpose here in Panama. I'm helping other people find their smile. I've got purpose. I know what my mission is when I wake up. I know what my mission is when I go to bed. I know that I can help people. I know that I can. With those talents that I've been blessed with, I can do this. And I will intentionally never stop trying to be that charitable person with the education. And maybe it's something different 5 years from now. I don't know. But today I have purpose, and I don't think, well, if I'm gone, the world is a better place, or they won't miss me. I don't believe that now. There's people that are counting on me to give them what they're looking for. So that's the veteran community. The veterans need a facilitator that's got wisdom, that probably has more wisdom than most, and can pull them out of that freaking black hole and say, freaking knock it off. Knock it off. Put your shoes on. We're going to live.
So
That's
giving
why
purpose.
that's why I'm dealing with the veterans, because most people that deal with veterans, they're using the veteran community to figure out how to make money off of them. Okay, whatever it is. So you got, we're a veteran-owned coffee company. Well, what the fuck's your purpose?
Right.
Why do you have to say we're a veteran-owned coffee company? Well, good for you. What are you doing for the veteran with that? What are you actually doing? Other than jacking them up on caffeine. Well, what are you doing? You're leveraging the veteran status to make your own life better. That is not me. That if I never made a dime off of helping veterans get out of that black hole, I don't give a shit. I've done well in life. I don't need it, and I know that I can live on a hell of a lot less. So, and like I said, why make $30,000 a month if you got nowhere to spend it?
Right. Yeah.
So That's why. That's why I focus on veterans. I understand the mentality. I understand the lingo. I understand the difficulties that the combat veterans have. I understand. I'm 100% VA disabled. I understand that VA disability it's jacked up. It's out. I mean, it's just bad. So they've got someone that they can look to, not as a hero, but as someone that's like that dude has walked the walk. Let me
Right.
hear what has he got to say. You
All
know,
right.
sometimes some people need this. Knock it off. Knock it off. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. I've been there. I freaking 3 divorces, lost all my houses. Stop it. Just stop it. Freaking, I don't care what's happened to you. Let's just one day at a time get you out of here. Come down here and once again, I'm not selling Panama. I'm selling the idea, of there is an answer. We just got to find the answer.
Yeah. I read recently somewhere that throughout time in humanity that when shit was bad for people or when people needed to get themselves right or just as a people things needed to improve, we were nomadic. We would move. That's how
Yeah,
we got better. It wasn't a self-help book. They didn't you back in those days, Shit sucked, get up
sure,
and move. So for some people,
sure.
it's got nothing to do with your patriotism. It's got nothing to do with any of that. You just fit somewhere else sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could
Well,
see getting out of that veterans
well,
or just some people just get lost in the sauce sometime and helping them come
well,
out and see that there's another way, man. There's another
there,
way of life.
there's a term in the Army. It's called battle buddy, which it's you when you go to basic training, you're assigned a battle buddy, and you take care of each other. So for the veterans that have already moved to Panama, I've created a group of battle buddies that when a new
Ah,
veteran is coming
brilliant.
in to Panama, that I can hook them up. Not the legal questions and the financial questions which I handle,
Right,
but the
right.
where do I change? Where do I sign up for my cell phone? Where do I go? Where do I?
The day to day.
Yes. So I've got volunteer battle buddies, which is twofold because I've given the new battle buddies who are here for maybe 6 months. I've now given them purpose, and the people that are a
Yeah, yeah.
little timid on this side about moving into a country, culture shock, whatever, that they've got someone that they could text at 9 o'clock at night saying, "Hey, I need to go get." I just had one. A guy's on testosterone treatment. He's like, "Where do I donate blood? I gotta, my blood's getting a little thick." So those kind of things, they're not the day to day. Sometimes they are the day to day, but to create that kind of environment, a sense of purpose. So yeah, it was a little sneaky the way I did it. I'm like, we're just going to help other veterans, but I know that I'm helping them do that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I made it look like I'm the bad guy. I'm like, I ain't got time for all this shit. I need your help. So,
Cool.
anyways,
So, all right, Jay, give me a plug, man. How do we get in touch with you? How do we, if I want your services, I see the interview, I want to talk to you. How do I find you? Give me a plug.
all right. So, easiest way, follow the TikTok channel, Panahunga Advisory. All the contact information is there. If you're not on TikTok, I've got a YouTube channel, same thing, Panahunga Advisory. I don't put much on it because I hate freaking YouTube. But anyways, the website's Panahunga Advisory. So Panahunga Spanish is not it's PANAJUNG or GLA. So it's not hard to find me. If someone searches my name, they're going to find either my investment advisory firm in Florida or they're going to find me here in Panama.
Yeah.
That's the good thing and the bad thing about being, in a public presence for
Ever.
30 years. But, and don't pay attention to all those lawsuits. They ain't nothing. But, but that's the easiest way. And for anyone that's interested, the best way that I have found is to do like we're doing right here, is to set up like a Google Meet. I hate texting. I want to talk to you. I
Right.
want to, like, once again, I study people. I know when you're lying to me. I taught deception detection at the police academy. So I need to know who you are, and you need to know who I am, to know that I'm not full of BS and that I'm actually here to try to help. But a 1 hour face to face on Google, which is great. I mean, everyone complains about, social media. But I'm telling you, I would have lost contact with 90 to 95% of the people I knew in my life if it wasn't for social media.
It's a tool. It's a
Yeah,
tool,
all
like
the
you said.
military guys. So once again, you know, for someone just to follow me, and I'm not plugging to follow me, but if they have interest in specifically Panama and Colombia, just watch, you pick up some tidbits, every once in a while I wake up on the wrong side of the bed and I tear somebody's ass up on a video and then, but it, that happens, right? And those are the videos that get like 500,000
Yeah,
views.
those are the ones that take off, right?
I start dropping the F-bomb and start calling people out. But that's the easiest way. And I'm going to ask if you've got interest in it, follow the channel. I've got hundreds of hours of videos. I don't put much on the website because people don't use websites much anymore. But if you're really serious, whether it's a veteran just saying, "Hey, what do I do?" Or it's somebody that's not a veteran just says, "I'm retiring next year. I want to go to Panama or maybe Colombia." What does that entail? I am the guy. I mean, I know Panama, I know Colombia, I don't freaking jerk people's chains. I'm just in your face. My time's valuable. Your time's valuable. Money is valuable. Don't be spending money on freaking riding around on a bus visiting freaking. Just talk to me. Just talk to me.
Excellent,
So,
man. I'll have everything in the comments section. Jay, thank you so much, brother. It's been a great interview, man. Thank you, man.
This is the other thing. I got to meet someone interesting like yourself.
Yeah.
So what a great world that we can live in if we choose.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So Jay, thank you so much for the interview, my brother. I'll have all your contact information in the comments, and it's been a pleasure, man. It's been awesome speaking with you.
Same here. I loved it.
Wow, Jay, that's a lot, man. That was a lot to unpack. You're incredible, man. You've lived an amazing life. Thank you for all your insight. I wish you nothing but the best, my brother. Thank you so much. I mean, you guys, that's a crazy story, huh? That was amazing. I'm sure you got a lot of value out of that. It was a really good show. If you have any questions that you want me to ask my guests in the future, just write it in the comments section. Give me a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks.